Imagine if I told you there's something out there that breathes like a human but isn't human at all. Would you believe me? If not, listen to this story till the end. It might just change what you think is real. This is Whisper from History, where forgotten voices rise again. Under a burning southwestern sun, a lone traveler stops in the middle of a dusty road, his horse uneasy beneath him. The silence is thick but not empty. Something is watching him. A presence he cannot see but can feel in the dry wind brushing against his skin. He turns slowly, expecting a wolf or a wandering coyote, but finds nothing. Only the endless desert staring back, and yet he knows he is not alone. For here in the forgotten corners of New Mexico and Arizona, people whisper of creatures wearing the shapes of others' beasts, with eyes that remember the faces of men. The native tribes of this land remembered these stories long before towns and fences carved up the horizon. They warned of the ones who walked between forms. Creatures who could shift like shadows, slipping between animal instinct and human malice. The elders called them skinwalkers, beings so feared that even the mention of their name could chill a fire to ash. But that was only one name carried by the wind. Another came from ranchers, travelers, and wandering souls. They spoke of coyotes that did not act like coyotes, creatures that moved like ghosts and stared like old men with secrets in their eyes. It began as scattered reports, a coyote walking upright on two legs outside a Navajo reservation, a pair of yellow eyes watching from a rooftop in the heart of the night. A missing child found days later, claiming he was followed by a beast that spoke with a human voice. The local authorities dismissed it as folklore, superstition, or the tricks of a frightened mind. But even they began to hesitate when the bodies appeared. Burned animal carcasses were found hanging from trees. Trails of paw prints that suddenly turned into bare human footprints, leading into nowhere. But what was really happening behind the curtain? In the late 19th century, the expansion of railroads forced settlements into lands once protected by silence. Homesteaders arrived with wagons and rifles, unaware of the stories buried under the soil. They wrote in their journals of coyotes circling their camps, not scavenging, but staring, watching, with a strange human patience that made even seasoned hunters feel exposed. One entry spoke of a coyote with gray fur and a scar over its left eye that followed their wagon for 3 days, never attacking, never fleeing, just observing. It was shot on the 4th day, and when they approached the body, it was gone. Speculation grew. Rumors spread like wild brush fire along train tracks and through saloons. Some claimed government agents were already aware of the phenomenon. Others insisted they were the result of ancient rituals born out of revenge and blood sacrifice. The truth was never written down but carved into memory and fear. A Navajo tracker named Sina wrote of one such night. He saw a group of coyotes gathered around a fire in the desert. Their bodies shimmered in the heat, and the air crackled with something that did not belong to this world. One of them locked eyes with him and stood tall. Its body rippled like smoke and shifted into the form of a man wearing the skin of a coyote. But this was only the beginning. As the 20th century dawned, modern law enforcement brushed aside these tales. Science marched forward, electricity lit the night, and men began to believe the world was under their control. Yet the old stories refused to die. They resurfaced in the most unusual ways. A highway patrolman in the 1950s reported chasing a coyote that led him nearly 10 miles through the desert. The creature ran faster than any animal he had ever seen, until it suddenly stopped, stood upright, and vanished into thin air. The officer resigned 2 weeks later and refused to speak of it again. The sightings continued into the 70s. Ranch families found their livestock mutilated with surgical precision, as if carved by unseen hands. Coyotes appeared at windows in the dead of night, staring with unnatural stillness, as if studying the people inside. Children claimed they heard whispers in an ancient tongue coming from the brush. At first it was dismissed as mass hysteria, or the influence of horror movies, But the patterns were too old, too consistent. These stories stretched back further than memory, further than language itself. What secret did these shifting beasts protect? An anthropologist named Ruth Delgado spent years gathering testimony from tribal elders, ranchers, and forgotten wanderers. What she pieced together was a mosaic of belief and fear. One elder told her that the shape-shifting coyotes were born from broken covenants between man and land. They were once protectors turned punishers, guardians turned shadows. Another rancher swore he shot one in the shoulder, only to find his neighbor the next day with a fresh gunshot wound in the exact same place. Truth or madness, no one could say. All they knew was that something had walked a line between human and predator for generations, and it was far from finished. But what if the legends were more than stories? What if these beings were the living remnants of a world humans chose to forget? A world where nature listened, and shadows learned to speak. In a journal locked away in a Pueblo archive, an unnamed witness described a night that still haunts the desert. A ritual circle marked with ash and bone. A man chanting in a trembling voice, a shriek that split the silence, and when it was over, a creature rose from the ground, a coyote. With eyes full of human pain and rage, the watcher fled behind him. The chanting stopped, replaced by a sound not meant for living ears. Decades passed with every abandoned ranch, every ghost town swallowed by sand. The stories sank deeper, yet they surfaced again in the 21st century. Trail cameras showed figures that blurred between species. Footage that was dismissed as glitches or hoaxes, but those who lived in the desert knew better. They knew the old fears had only been sleeping. In 2018, a hiker found tracks unlike any known animal. The prints began as paws, then, halfway through the trail, transformed into bare feet. The trail ended abruptly, at a rock wall with no ledge and no climb, but something had moved there, something that ignored the laws of flesh and gravity. The truth was far darker than anyone imagined. People began to vanish in remote corners of the Southwest, only fragments left behind. A torn shirt, a pool of blood, a trail of footprints ending in the sand. Authorities cited animal attacks, dehydration, or criminal acts. Yet survivors whispered of a coyote that called their name in the night. A creature that walked like a man and moved like a shadow. One survivor, an old man from Apache Junction, spoke to a local radio station. His voice shook as he described hearing his dead son calling him from outside the house. The voice was perfect, but the figure it came from was not human. Eyes, yellow and cold, set in a face made of fur. Was it madness, grief, or a warning from a world older than reason? These questions lingered as the desert swallowed the evidence again. Every new witness became part of an unending story, a story that would not die, no matter how much the world tried to bury it. And maybe the truth was not in the sightings, or the bodies, or the rituals. Maybe the truth was in the land itself, a land that never forgot the voices of those who tried to command it, a land that changed the shape of its anger. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the wind turns cold, and the stars flicker out, something still moves across the sands. Something that watches from the ridges with a mind. Older than towns, older than trails, older than the people who think they own the earth. It shifts. Between wolf and coyote and man, it remembers every wound, every trespass, every forgotten promise, and it is not done yet. If you ever hear the sound of breathing in the dead of night, remember this: something is out there, close enough to watch you, but silent enough to stay hidden. If this story gave you chills, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you're brave enough to uncover more mysteries, check out our playlist. The darkness only gets deeper from here.